Ladies and gentlemen, every indication pointed to Raila Odinga not only being a front-runner in the AUC chairmanship race, but one that had all it takes to win that election. So, what happened? What changed? How did Raila Odinga, a front-runner, by every measure, end up losing to somebody from Djibouti? What really happened? In this video, I want to share with you the real reason why Raila ended up losing the AUC election. If that is something you are keen on, stay tuned. And if you're watching for the first time, take a moment, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss similar videos. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, everything was working for Raila Odinga. Every serious and biased analyst would tell you that Raila Odinga had the best run campaign. Number two, Raila Odinga had the most endorsement from heads of state, some of them verbal. Whether it was in the Maghreb, Raila had the verbal open confirmation from Algeria. Whether it was the Francophone, Raila had the likes of Senegal endorsing them openly. Whether it was ECOWAS, Ghana, Nigeria, and others were endorsing Raila Odinga. Even if you were to go down to SADC, South Africa, Namibia, and others were for Raila Odinga. The East African community fully endorsed Raila Odinga. They even came to State House, Nairobi, and declared their support, one leader after the other. So everything that Raila needed to win was there. How did he lose? Well, first of all, let us go through the theories that people are floating. Then I'll jump right into what I'm persuaded 100% is the reason Raila Odinga lost. One of the theories that people are floating is that there was local sabotage. That Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president, didn't want Raila Odinga to be the AUC chair. Of course, Uhuru Kenyatta was very non-committal on Raila Odinga's bid. He hardly talked about it, let alone endorsing Raila Odinga anytime for the AUC seat. However, to claim that he was so influential that he would go to the point of convincing heads of states that had given their commitments to Raila to change their view, to me, seems far-fetched. Now, I don't want to rubbish that theory because perhaps there are people who were there and saw him doing that literally. My belief is just that he is not that influential. You might be overestimating Uhuru's influence. But then again, that is one theory people are floating, that Uhuru Kenyatta wants Raila back to help him with Project Matiang'i for president. That also means that Uhuru Kenyatta is not supporting William Ruto as he had indicated earlier through official statement. And so that theory is like, we were winning, but a traitor locally went and sabotaged us at the international stage. Like I said, I find it so far-fetched, but then if there are people with evidence, I would change my mind. The second theory is that we were rejected because of Kenya's stance on Palestine. There are two things that people need to understand here. Kenya has a very straightforward position on the issue of Palestine. Diplomatically, we support a two-state solution. However, this is where Kenya differs with some of these people. And allow me to call them with some of these hypocrites. Kenya has refused to endorse Hamas, the terrorist organization that went and slaughtered Israelis. On October 10th, Hamas, a terrorist organization that is brutally mistreating the people of Gaza, went and launched an attack against innocent citizens in Israel. They slaughtered hundreds of people. Now, there were two reactions. People who know that that was terrorism called it what it was. They condemned it and they said it cannot be supported by any sane person. Those who value political correctness and virtue signaling praised these terrorists as freedom fighters, people who struck a blow on the oppressors being the Israelis. I want to tell you that Kenya was not going to join such people. And it doesn't matter who was president, whether it was Ruto, it doesn't matter who was president. Kenya was not going to endorse what Hamas did. Forget what the people on Twitter were doing and others. Kenya was not going to endorse what Hamas did. Celebrating terrorists as freedom fighters is something that Kenya was not going to do. And for one reason. Kenya has experienced firsthand what terrorists can do. Remember, Kenya has been bombed by Al-Qaeda. We've lost hundreds of souls. There was also bombing in Kikambala by terrorists. Kenyans have been butchered at a mall, Westgate Mall. Butchered. Even at Dusit, Kenyans have been killed. Not to mention innocent students who were butchered in Garissa by Al-Shabaab. If Al-Shabaab claimed that they were freedom fighters, would you support them? If you are one of the people whose brother, whose sister, whose kid was being butchered in Garissa University, would you say, oh, those are freedom fighters who are rebelling with Kenyans' interference in their country? No. You would call them who they are, terrorists. And so, when it comes to Hamas, Kenya has a position that this is a terrorist organization whose actions are bad for the society and must be condemned. Other African countries, for political correctness, like I said, wants to call these people freedom fighters. It is not in our interest to just join people for the sake of it. We cannot condone terrorism at the international level and condemn it locally. If we believe that what Hamas did in Israel is an act of freedom fighting, an act of bravery, something that should be celebrated, then we shouldn't complain when Al-Shabaab does the same to us. Even if Al-Shabaab came and bombed the church, we should be like, wow, these freedom fighters caught us off guard. That is not what Kenya is going to do. Kenya will not endorse Al-Shabaab, neither will they endorse the actions of Hamas and Hezbollah. Those are terrorist organizations. But as far as Palestinians are concerned, Kenya has always pronounced herself and said that they support a two-state solution, which is what most people also support. The hypocrisy is Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, all neighboring the Gaza, also condemned the attack openly. And they called it an act of terrorism, openly. So if the neighbors are calling this a terrorist attack, these are fellow Muslims, these are the neighbors of the Palestinians, why is it awkward for Kenya to call it the same? Why would people find that as a bad move, diplomatically speaking? I don't think it is in Kenya's interest to support a terrorist organization just to appear modern or whatever it is that nowadays people call woke. That is the theory that Kenya's position on Palestine cost us. That is why they brought their Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of Palestinians, to the AUC to whip emotions and make people vote against Kenya. Okay, fine. I just wanted to tell you, if that is one reason that these people used to vote against Kenya, then it is the most hypocritical reason ever. Now, the third theory why we lost is that Kenya is an ally of the US and that the world is trying to oppose the United States. And so if you are with the US and you are their partner and you are their ally, chances are that everybody is going to reject you, especially in Africa. That, I believe, is a pure lie. Why? The Djibouti candidate comes from a country that is essentially a US military base. There are several military bases in Djibouti, but US has one of the biggest military bases in Djibouti. That makes them an ally. You cannot have a military base in a country without their consent. They're allies. We don't even have a military base in Kenya. We don't even have a US military base in Kenya. But Djibouti does. Djibouti has that. If it is a matter of being an ally, who gets the most military support from the US? That is Egypt. Who is the leading trading partner of the US in Africa? That could be South Africa. So it can't be that when other people are having are trading with US and are having their military bases and are even receiving a lot of military support from them, it is okay. But Kenya, being an ally of US, becomes a big deal to the point that our candidate has to be rejected. I don't buy into that. I believe that if people hid behind that, it is also a very lame excuse. If there are people who are persuaded that is something that played a role, I don't think so. But if it played a role, it is also one thing that I would say outright, it's a double standard, because we are not the only people who are having, who are allies of the United States. I have told you, Djibouti, from where the candidate came, is a military base of the Americans. Egypt is receiving a lot of military aid from the US. South Africa is doing serious businesses with America. So it can't be that just being friendly with America, just a simple visit to the US is enough to cost us. I don't think so. What I think happened, ladies and gentlemen, and this is why I believe we lost. In my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, we lost because of the tiff between South Africa and Rwanda. It has nothing to do with us, but we were caught in the fire. It is a tiff between supremacy war between South Africa and Rwanda. So what do I mean by we lost because of a diplomatic wrangle between Rwanda and South Africa? There is war in Congo. Of course, Congo has had war for a long time. But this time, there is a rebel group called M23. This rebel group, there are people who say that it is supported by Rwanda, because mostly it is made up of Rwandese of Congo descent. The rebels claim that they have been mistreated by Congolese government, and for that reason they have taken law in their hand and they are now taking town after town. So South Africa, being a friend of DRC, and DRC being a member of SADC, feels the responsibility to defend Congo from Rwanda's interference. So what did South Africa want? They wanted Ruto, who is the current chair of East African Community, which Rwanda and Congo are both members, to condemn Rwanda outright. Now, Ruto, being the chair, cannot, ladies and gentlemen, condemn one member of the community. He must mediate. He cannot take sides as the chair. And so Ruto did not take sides. Now, it gets even more interesting. Failure to take side for South Africa was unacceptable. And so they expected that Ruto would change his mind. And during the meeting of SADC and East African Community that was done in Tanzania the other day, Ruto was supposed to condemn Rwanda and say that Rwanda is the one that is causing chaos in Congo. Rwanda is the one that is backing the rebels. Rwanda is the one that is destabilizing another country. Ruto still maintained his neutral position. He was of the opinion that what needs to be done is not the blame game. What needs to be done was to find solution that would last longer. Considering that Congo has been a battlefield for decades, Ruto was saying what we need is permanent solution. And to get permanent solution, you have to go into the root causes of this problem, not to just look at the results. Go to the root causes. What is actually causing the problem in Congo? And so expecting Ruto to come and start condemning Kagame to appease Ramaphosa and SADC was asking for too much. I want you to get that point. Ruto has refused to condemn Rwanda. Raila also has not condemned Rwanda. Instead, he has visited Rwanda, but he has also visited Ramaphosa. He told them that, in his opinion, what is needed is a lasting solution, not war, not people blaming each other. I think Ramaphosa didn't like this. And so, a few days to election, the SADC, which is just controlled by South Africa, wrote a letter urging their members to vote for Richard James from Madagascar. Remember, members of SADC, several of them, had verbally endorsed Raila Odinga and said they were going to vote for him, Ramaphosa included. And now, because we had refused to take part in their diplomatic war with Rwanda, they were now saying they will vote for their own, all of them. And so when we went to Ethiopia, that is exactly what happened. They stood behind Richard James from Madagascar. The Muslims, I think, decided to stand with one of their own. But Raila still emerged victorious, as was expected. Remember, he ran the best campaign, he had most of the endorsements, and he was the front runner and somebody who was likely to win. So in the first round, he won. He won the second round. Then SADC pulled their card to punish Kenya for not taking a stand against Rwanda. And considering that the Rwandese president, Paul Kagame, had openly said that he was supporting Raila Odinga, to show that SADC was not going to vote with Kagame, the people that were supporting Mr. Richard from Madagascar started slowly by slowly endorsing the Djibouti guy. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how Raila Odinga lost. Raila Odinga's candidature was slaughtered at the altar of diplomatic wrangles between South Africa and Rwanda concerning Congo. So we were people who were caught in the middle. To teach us a lesson, they voted for the Djibouti guy. But then you may ask, but Sam, if we know that this was going to cost us a lot, why couldn't we just play ball? Rwanda can't be more important than the 10 votes we were going to get from SADC. I disagree. You see, AUC elections are not worth having angry neighbors around you. Winning the AUC chairmanship is not more important than trading with Rwanda. I want to repeat that. Having Uganda as a neighbor, having Southern Sudan as a neighbor, and having Rwanda as a neighbor, or markets where we can sell our good, is more important to Kenya than having AUC chairmanship position. Number two, which is very important. You see, if you accuse Rwanda for the sake of it, you know very well that you are lying, that you are accusing them for the sake of getting votes. That is the worst form of betrayal, considering Rwanda is part of East Africa community. So if you are going to choose and create animosity with members of the East African community, just to appease members of SADC, hoping that they will vote for you, that is not a chance we were willing to take. Because what if we made enemies with Rwanda, and which, I want to tell you, if we made enemies with Rwanda, it was just a matter of time we were going to make enemies with Uganda, and that one would go to enemies with Southern Sudan, and then we will be enemies with Ethiopia. So we were going to be surrounded by neighbors who hate us, so that at least we can please South Africa and other countries in the South. Okay? Was that worth it? In my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, nobody does that. You cannot create problems with your neighbors to appease other people, especially when what you are being asked to do is also not even true. You are being asked to take a side on a war that personally you know very little about, and even if you knew something about, you would want lasting peace as opposed to blame game. So Kenya did not do what was expected by the South African countries, and for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, we lost. I like how Raila Odinga summarized this outcome. He said, I gave myself and my experience to African heads of states, but they thought otherwise. They wanted something else. And so I wish them well. And ladies and gentlemen, I would join Raila in saying, I wish them well. If that is the cost of getting the AUC seat, that Kenya has to now endorse terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab or Hamas, then I don't think it is worth it. If Kenya is now supposed to take sides in a war that has cost millions of lives just for purposes of getting a seat, I don't think that is worth it. And if Kenya is supposed to now make an enemy in a very strategic partner like America and a technological powerhouse like Israel, just for purposes of getting positions in the African Union, I don't think so. And I want to tell you, the hypocrisy at the African Union is thinking, because most of those countries that would want to punish you or make you look bad for associating with America are not just receiving aid from America, they depend on it. Some of the countries that are telling you to make Israel your enemy not only receive technological help from Israel, they depend on those technological help. Even Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan are doing business with Israel. Yet, in Africa, you are expected to take side and start calling Israelites occupiers and other names. No. As far as our diplomatic position is concerned, whether it was under Uhuru Kenyatta, whether it was under Mwai Kibaki, Kenya has remained consistent. We are not going to we are not going to go against our beliefs and our principles in the name of trying to fit in. If you found values, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, please like it and share it with friends. And if you're watching for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you are notified next time we produce a similar video. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, here is Raila's concession speech. Watch it and see that Raila also was not surprised.